Todd Zolecki, MLB.com, covers the Phillies, has done it for a long time and has seen the good, the bad, the ugly. And this one maybe, Todd, the surprising here for the Phillies. And are you shocked to say that this team is competitive and hanging around, or did you think early on that there were some signs that this team could be competitive?
No, I'm definitely surprised that they have a winning record at this point. Before the season started, watching this team play in spring training, I was probably one of the more optimistic people. And that being said, I predicted them to only win 73 games. I just didn't think that they were going to have enough, one way, shape, or another, in terms of being able to win on a consistent basis. And sure enough, the pitching's been pretty good, but the offense has been, flat out awful. And that's why I think over the course of a season, I still feel pretty good about those 73 wins. I just think it's going to be tough to go an entire season with a winning record and, being outscored like they have been.
Yeah, 8 runs in the series against the Cardinals. And I said, to me, the ceiling, if you are saying best case scenario, I was around 75, meaning that was the best you can hope for, and that would be a team that arrived a little early, and then next year people would start writing about the Phillies as, the team that people should watch out for. But are there signs that they could be a team next year that are already exceeding expectations at the big league level?
Yeah, I think you can definitely say that, and I think it starts with those 3 starters that they have in the rotation. Eichhoff didn't pitch great yesterday, but Nola, Eichhoff, and Vince Velasquez. You have to start with starting pitching. I know I get a lot of Phillies fans will say, yeah, well, they had great starting pitching in 2011, and what did that get them? And my argument there is it got them 102 wins. They were the best team in baseball. They just flopped in the postseason. You have to have good starting pitching, and that's why they have a good record right now. If they had an improved offense but a terrible pitching staff, they wouldn't be above 500. They look at last season. Sean O'Sullivan, Chad Billingsley, Jerome Williams, David Buchanan, Severino Gonzalez, Kevin Correa. They were getting obliterated every night. Down 5-6 runs after the first couple innings, and they had the worst record in baseball. Now they're actually getting some competent starting pitching. So I think if those guys continue to pitch well throughout the season and look like the beginnings of a good core, a good nucleus for the starting pitching staff, then I think people going into next season will say, all right, well, if they can maybe add a bat here, or maybe later this season you see Crawford, maybe later this season you see Nick Williams, and those guys kind of start to establish themselves. And I think, you'll start to see people start going, hey, maybe they could be the surprise NL wildcard contender of 2017.
Yeah, now what about this year in terms of if their pitching continues to pitch well, which my concern is you got so many young guys you're leaning on. At what point do they hit the fumes? And then it's every night you're in close games, which means you're going to Neris and Gomez. Almost you have to. Those 2 guys are going to be in the mix almost every single night. At what point do those guys hit the skids and you wonder, we got to at least give some other offensive guys an opportunity? Are there any guys that are intriguing behind that you could see, hey, you know what? We're competitive. Let's give this guy a call up and see what he can do. Or do those guys just not exist?
Well, they exist in the sense that, maybe at some point you'll see Nick Williams up. If he got off to a really slow start, he's hit the ball a little bit better lately. Maybe you'll see him at some point. Tommy Joseph is having a great year, but he's a first baseman right now, and right now, right or wrong, Ryan Howard and Darren Ruff are the first baseman. So I don't know how if they're. I don't think the Phillies are really pressing to get him up there ASAP. And J.P. Crawford, the shortstop, he's actually off to a pretty decent start in Double-A. But I think I just don't see the Phillies going, oh my gosh, we have to hook up Nola, Eichhoff, and Velasquez. Let's rush J.P. Crawford to the big leagues. I think anything that happens this season for the Phillies, particularly the way the front office is looking at it, is a bonus. So I don't think they're going to feel pressured to go in and bring up somebody that might not be ready if it means maybe screwing them up for the long term. I think they're going to continue to maintain a patient approach. And again, just look at if they happen to have a winning record or they're more competitive than they thought they would be, that's a nice bonus.
Todd Zolecki, MLB.com, covers the Phillies. And, one thing the last couple of years, they brought guys in here trying to trade them, and Jeremy Hellickson would have been a guy, Morton, who's now out for the year. If they're hanging around, what kind of decision do they have there?
Well, if they're hanging around, I still think they need to trade. Jeremy Hellickson is pitching really well, and you can get somebody of quality for him. I wouldn't just give him away just to give him away, because I think he has value in terms of stabilizing the rotation, and I think he has value in terms of giving those younger pitchers somebody at least to talk to and ask questions. I just don't think that you just give them away. But say they're flirting around 500. It's middle of July, and a team calls up the Phillies and says, "Hey, we'll give you this hard-throwing Double-A right-handed reliever. He touches 98, 99, 100 miles an hour for Jeremy Hellickson." If I'm the Phillies, I make that trade. I do. I make that trade, and then I call up one of the other young pitchers in AAA, whether that be Mark Appel, Jake Thompson, or Zach Eflin, and kind of see what they got and get their feet wet a little bit.
Well, and I was going to say, is that possible because of what you now have behind them at this stage, that you do say, you know what, I've got other guys that I can call up, so if I can get something for Hellickson, I'll do that. And are there any other, I guess, Hellickson-type players to keep an eye on in the similar situation?
Well, I think to answer your second question, Carlos Ruiz to me is a guy to keep an eye on. He's off to a pretty decent start. He's a part-time catcher. He's not an everyday catcher anymore. But I've got to think that if he continues to hit the ball relatively well, that a contending team that might be looking for some catching depth would look at him. So he's a candidate. Other than that, it's Ryan Howard's just not hitting the ball well. I think he's got 7 home runs, but I don't think he's hitting the ball well enough to even entice a team maybe for a 2 or 3 month rental. But those two guys certainly make a lot of sense. Andrew Bailey, if he would get on a roll and look like a capable middle reliever, I think he's another guy that the Phillies could flip.
And you mentioned Carlos Ruiz. They got a couple of veterans. I guess not veteran players, but Cody Ashe on the way back at some point, and also Altair. Are they hoping that those two guys, I compared them to like the Flyers, who just decided to be patient, weren't going to do anything at the deadline. They said, we got some guys in the minors or coming back from injury that we think can help them. Are they hoping that maybe those two can just make the offense mediocre?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's that as well. So, because I have been getting a lot of questions of, well, shouldn't they go out and try to get somebody? And I just don't see them doing that. And you're right. Not that Cody Ashe and Aaron Altair are going to really elevate the offense, but they'll probably be better than what Peter Borges is giving you, which is next to nothing offensively. And, that combination of David Lowe, Tyler Goodell, which, Lowe's been okay, but that's comparing him, to Cedric Hunter and what Tyler Goodell was giving in left field. So, yeah, I think they're hoping that those two guys can come back and provide a little bit more offense than they've been getting. But again, I just don't see them saying, "Oh boy, we're game under 500 going into middle of July. We're only 6.5 out of the wild card race. Let's trade Jorge Alfaro or one of our top prospects to get a big bat to help this team." Because quite frankly, I think there's enough missing pieces right now, or enough undeveloped pieces, that you don't kind of sacrifice the future for the possibility of being in the wild card race, the last 2-3 months of the season.
Yeah, and it seems that they are not one bat, but many bats away from competing. I mean, it's sad, Todd, when Howard's not in the lineup yesterday, and Franco, and it's noticeable before the game. Wow, Howard's not in the lineup. In years past, you'd be happy, fans would be, that he wasn't in the lineup. Yesterday was noticeable because he wasn't in the lineup, and that's a sign that, man, they are really struggling offensively as a team. Yeah,
you look at Howard and you say, okay, 7 home runs, 14 RBIs, but he's hitting 193, and exactly what you said, that they're missing him. And despite the fact he's hitting 193, his OPS is under 700. Michael Franco's been struggling quite a bit. He hasn't been the same hitter that he was late last season once he got on a roll before he got injured. So, both of those guys out haven't been producing, but you look at the rest of the team they have, and they're going, boy, they really could use them back in that lineup.
Yeah, and, Howard supplied a little bit of power in that St. Louis series, but Franco, he has struggled. Seems like he has been very streaky. Is that a product of him putting too much pressure on himself because he's really the only bat? Is a product of, he's a young player and that just, he's going to be a streaky hitter? What do you see in all these up and down swings from Franco?
I think a couple things. I do think it's kind of the growing pains of a young hitter, because I do know that the scouts around the league, they love his bat. They think he's going to hit. It might be a little bit of him pressing, because he's not getting off to such a good start, and I think he knows that there's high expectations on him. So sometimes you see his swing get a lot out of whack. Maybe be a little bit too much of a free swinger, not as patient at the plate as he needs to be. So I think that has something to do with it. I don't think anybody's too concerned about it. But also, if you're an opposing team or opposing pitcher, and you're facing that lineup, there's really only two guys you're even mildly afraid of, and that's Odubel Herrera and Michael Franco. So if you have a runner on base and Michael Franco's up, there's really no reason to give him anything good to hit because unless you throw one over the plate and Howard gets a hold of one, like I said, he's hitting under 200, and everybody pretty much behind him is struggling as well.
Todd, you've been around the organization for a long time. You've seen a lot of different things. Is there a different feel now that they've kind of gone outside the organization to, in the front office? Do you notice that things are different with the Phillies?
Yeah, things are different. Nothing has really stood out too much. But it is certainly different not having, there was that connection between Ed Wade and Ruben Amaro Jr. Pat Gill kind of broke that up a little bit, but Ruben remained in the organization. So things are definitely new. You have Matt Klentak as a GM. You have Ned Rice as an assistant GM. They've bolstered the analytics department. Hiring Jay Galdi from Google, and they've definitely changed some things around there. Having Pete Mackanin for a full season is definitely different, a much-needed improvement over what Ryan Sandberg was bringing to the table last year before he quit in June. So things are different. I think it was a change that needed to be made. I think sometimes change is good. And, I think it's definitely benefited the Phillies so far. Not to say that, Klentak's arrival is why this team is playing as well it is. A lot of these pitchers were already there other than Velasquez. But the change, I think, is something that was needed, and it's kind of brought a fresh face to everything that's going on down in the ballpark.
Yeah, and Velasquez will pitch tonight, Todd, 4-1, looking for his fifth here. The numbers are jumping off the page. What impresses you about this kid who it was funny, Jim Bowden was on with us last week. He said, I'm assuming the Astros wish they had him back.
Yeah, exactly. That trade right now is looking great for the Phillies. Velasquez has pitched great. Mark Appel's off to a decent start in AAA. Tom Eshelman was one of the guys they got in that trade. He's pitched pretty well in Class A. So they've so far this trade looks really good for them. But Velasquez, just his demeanor on the mound. First of all, he's got great stuff. He throws 97, 95, 97. He's got a great curveball. But he's got some swagger to him, which I like. And I think if he continues to pitch well, he's going to really become a fan favorite because of that swagger. But I think one thing fans need to remember is that he's never pitched more than 124 innings in the season. So that's another reason why, if I'm the Phillies, I'm not, maybe acquiring an outfielder for a late season run is because there's pretty good chance that Vince Velasquez is not going to finish the season in the rotation. I just don't see him going out making 30, 33 starts, pitching 200 innings when he's literally never pitched more than 124 innings in a season before.
Yeah, that's kind of something that would worry me too, is how much can they ride these young guys, and that includes Nola and Eichhoff, and Nola has been pitching outstanding as well. Has he... even though people liked him and thought he'd be pretty good, has he exceeded his expectations in terms of what maybe, when he was coming up, people said, he's probably a middle-of-the-rotation guy. Do you think he's better than he was advertised?
Yeah, so far it's certainly looking that way. That was the kind of the talk about him when the Phillies drafted him, and even before he got called up. Pretty much every single scout I talked to would say, he's a really good number 3. Like, he's going to be a good, solid piece to the Phillies' rotation for years to come. Nobody ever said he's going to be an all-star or he has the potential to be a really good number 2 or even a number 1. And I'm not saying he's going to be an ace of the rotation, but certainly he is pitching like a guy that can go out, dominate games, pitching like a guy that can stop a losing streak, and a lot of it has to do with his control. He can really locate the fastball, and he can work both sides of the plate, and he's got a really good curveball, and those are the reasons why I think, despite the fact he's not like Velasquez where he throws 97, he's been pitching with a lot of success and striking out a lot of batters.
Yeah, and the other guy I think has exceeded, I would assume has exceeded expectations is Eichhoff. I mean, he wasn't the top name in that Hamels deal, but he seems like a guy who at least, if you're talking about him at the back end of your rotation when all these other pieces start to filter through, it seems like another guy that maybe the expectations have been exceeded.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. He was kind of that those five players the Phillies got back. He was kind of the number 4 guy of those 5, and you're right. He might not be a number 2 or number 3, although he has certainly flashed that, and he's been a little bumpy so far this season. But I think what's good about him is he is a good solid arm, and when you talk about building a young pitching staff or just a pitching staff in general, those guys are very, very hard to find. I mean, think about the number 4, number 5 type starters and what they get on the free agent market. You're talking about guys like Jay Happ getting, 3 years, $36 million with a career ERA of over 4.5. So if you can actually develop those guys and have them in your system, it's huge. And I think that's why a guy like Eichhoff can end up being a huge steal for the Phillies.
In your opinion, because to me, I'm counting up a lot of these guys. You got 3 already up here: Nola, Eichhoff, and Velasquez. You've talked about Appel, and of course Jake Thompson and Eflin, and there's other names that we've not even gotten to. Is there a closer somewhere in this mix? Is there that young guy who's just going to get pushed out of the rotation because there's so many guys? The numbers game is just, and then that guy becomes, all right, well, he's got the big power arm. We'll start to move him to the back end.
Well, I think they had a couple guys in spring training that kind of fit that bill. Jimmy Cordero was in spring training. He didn't really pitch because he was hurt, but they got him in the Ben Revere trade last year. Throws like 99 to 100 miles an hour. He is somebody they think can be that type of pitcher. And another guy they had in camp didn't really show that well, but I'm going to mispronounce his name. It's Udubre Ramos. He pitched really well last season, and I think they look at him as a potential closer. He doesn't throw as hard as Cordero, but he does not walk many batters at all. So that's kind of what you need in the ninth. You don't want a guy that's going to go up there throwing 100 miles an hour, but puts the first guy on, and then a flare single. Next thing you know, there's runners on first and third, and then the game's blown. Ramos has pitched pretty well so far in Reading, and I think he is a guy also to keep an eye on. He's not as flashy, like I said. He doesn't throw as hard, but he throws strikes, and he knows how to get guys out.
All right, Phil's back in action tonight. We'll see if they can put any runs on the board in Miami. It has been a struggle offensively, but that pitching staff has made them at least entertaining for much longer than many of us thought. Todd Zolecki over at MLB.com. He covers the Phillies, and he joined us here with some insight on this team, 16-13 heading to Miami. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.